If you, like me, had been asked several years ago, do you know anything about the Porch Creek Indian tribe? Then you probably would have said, like me, oh yeah, don't they operate that Atmore casino just off I-65? And if that was your response, then you, like me, would have been a little right and mostly wrong. Because while the Porch Creek tribe does indeed own and operate that casino, there is so much more to what they do throughout Alabama and beyond. From their modest beginnings in the 1980s, when they finally received long overdue official recognition by the US government, the Porch Creek tribe has grown into a major economic force in Alabama. From casinos to hotels to manufacturing facilities to agricultural operations and more, the Porch Creek tribe employs thousands of Alabamians, from Huntsville to Montgomery to Atmore to Mobile to Foley and beyond. You'll hear the details about this and more today from Robert McGhee, the Vice Chair of the Tribal Council, who is in his 5th term on the council and is in charge of all of their governmental relations at the local, state, and federal levels. Robert received his undergraduate degrees from South Alabama and the University of Alabama, and received his MBA from the University of Tennessee. Before returning to Alabama, he spent 5 years in purgatory in Washington, D.C., working with the U.S. Senate, the Bureau of Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior, and with the Troutman Sanders law firm, Indian Practice Group. Before we hear from Robert, let me share a quick story that Robert didn't authorize, but I think speaks volumes about the tribal council he serves on. Everyone remembers a few years ago the devastating tornadoes that tore through Lee County and killed over 20 people, most of whom were from very low-income families who could not afford to pay for the funerals for the victims. The Lee County coroner reached out to a friend on the tribal council and asked if the council would help defray some of the funeral expenses. And within an hour, he had the answer that the tribal council would not only help defray those expenses, they would cover all the funeral expenses for all of the victims. And here's the most telling part. They tried to do this anonymously. Of course, word about something like that almost always gets out, but it certainly shows that the tribal council was doing it for all of the right reasons. And that is the kind of corporate citizen that we need and want in our state. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm Kiwanis welcome to Robert McGhee.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mac, for that kind introduction. On behalf of the Porch Creek Indians, I want to thank you for inviting me here and for your interest in learning more about our tribe. I feel very fortunate to know many of you in this room, and hopefully you did not show up just because of me. I think hopefully you're all loyal Kiwanises. If not, then you need to get them to.
Yes.
Okay, just saying. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to meet more Birmingham Kiwanis Club members. As Mac mentioned, I do have 2 jobs at Porch. I'm the Chief Governmental Affairs and Public Affairs Officer, which means I spend a lot of time in Montgomery and Washington, D.C., representing and advocating on the tribe's behalf to federal, state, and local lawmakers and the administration. I also have had the honor for almost 20 years to be elected by my people to serve on the tribal council. Currently, I'm in my 2nd term as the vice chairman. I've known about the Birmingham Kiwanis Club for many years. It was a long and proud tradition of making this community and the lives of its citizens better. We build by its serving. It's not just your motto, it defines the values that you hold dear. Hard work, a vision for the future, and a commitment to changing Birmingham and changing lives. So on behalf of my tribe, let me begin by saying thank you for what you're doing to benefit all of us who call Alabama home. The Porch community where our reservation is and where most of our tribal members live looks very different from Birmingham. But as people, I believe we are more alike than different in the most important ways. What we care about, what we work for, and how we measure our success. I believe we share concerns about quality of life and about doing better and doing more and helping about growing jobs, not just where we live and work, but for our neighbors across the state. I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity today to tell you a little bit about us and to talk about our shared interest. You've probably heard that we are Alabama's only federally recognized tribe. I want to talk with you about what that really means and why federal recognition is at the center of our tribe's path from poverty to prosperity as a sovereign nation. You may know that the Muskogee or Creek Nation once covered almost all of Alabama, as well as parts of Georgia and Florida. We helped the earliest settlers and traders navigate the waterways. And because our Indian towns were usually on the water, our ancestors became known as the Creek people. I'm trying to just notice this isn't going. Okay, sorry about that. I wasn't paying attention behind me. I'm looking at this. Our particular band of Creek families was known as the Porch Creek. And then, just as today, our tribal lands were found throughout Alabama in present-day cities such as Wetumpka, Montgomery, and Atmore. We are one of the few tribes east of the Mississippi River that managed to remain on our ancestral lands. Over the years, like a lot of other folks in rural Alabama, our people had limited job opportunities. They sharecropped, worked textile mills, and worked as boat hands. Many of our men even served in the armed services. We were and still are a community of deep faith. During the Depression, Episcopal missionaries were essential to our tribe surviving those hard years. They served as teachers, provided medical care, and other essential services to our people. They were also advocates. Starting as far back as 1931, those missionaries continuously wrote to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs requesting aid and assistance for our people. But for over 50 years, the federal government refused their requests. The standard response was always, since the Act of 1912, we, the federal government, we have little or nothing to do with any Creek Indians in Alabama. But years later, those missionaries, records, and correspondences were instrumental in helping us document our history to the U.S. government. This documentation was part of a long and exhaustive process that we had to go through the United States government to gain federal recognition as a sovereign Indian nation. It's hard to fathom that our people remained unrecognized for almost 150 years. But finally, in 1984, we, the Porch Bandit Creek Indians, were recognized by the federal government as a sovereign nation, and over 200 acres of our land was held in trust by the federal government. And that's when we started down the path to be truly self-sufficient. I want to stop here and take a minute to talk about the relationship that tribes like ours that are federal recognized as sovereign nations have with the federal government. First, our reservation lands are often referred to as trust lands because they are actually held in trust by the federal government. This arrangement was initially made to keep Indian tribes confined to specific areas, but in recent years, that trust arrangements has helped preserve Indian lands. Federally recognized tribes are deemed sovereign nations and by law have a government-to-government relationship with the U.S. government. That is an important piece to understand as we talk about Indian gaming. In the early 1980s, the gaming industry started growing by leaps and bounds in the U.S., not just in places such as Las Vegas, but also on reservations land occupied by sovereign nations. Congress saw the need to properly regulate this new economic engine, and in 1988 passed a law called the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. as we refer to as IGRA. IGRA provided tribes whose had lands held in trust prior to the passage of that act in 1988 with a federally regulated framework for creating and operating gaming businesses on their lands. Those lawmakers saw IGRA as a way to accomplish several important goals. First, mindful that the federal government was obligated to help tribes fund their essential services under treaty agreements, they saw that gaming dollars could fill the gap between what they could appropriate and what tribes actually needed. Additionally, since tribal governments don't have the ability to tax, the idea was that tribes could essentially use their gaming revenues to fund their government operations and pay for essential services, just like other governments use tax dollars. And perhaps most important of all, gaming operations could give tribes an opportunity to become self-sufficient. Fortunately, that is what we have been able to do. First and foremost, our gaming proceeds fund our government. Gaming dollars pay for essential services like police and fire protection, infrastructure, roads, healthcare and elder care, early childhood education, and scholarships for college and graduate schools. I know how much this group has done to improve and expand educational opportunities in Birmingham. And you can appreciate how much that has meant to your young people and their futures. Investments in essential services have dramatically improved the quality of life on our reservation that have allowed us to extend those services to our neighbors and communities where we live and do business, and even beyond that. Gaming revenues have paid for this, all without the federal government having to foot the bill. Let me stop here and address some information that we hear all too often, and that is the tribe does not pay taxes. That statement is simply not the case. We do pay taxes. We pay a lot of taxes. In the last 5 years, we've paid over $2.5 billion in payroll taxes alone. That being said, our tribal gaming revenues are not taxed because that would be the equivalent of one sovereign nation or state taxing another. Think about it this way. Alabama cannot tax Florida, even though as much as we would like to. As I mentioned earlier, Porch is a religious community. And I can tell you firsthand that gaming was probably not the business that we would have chosen to go into. But it was the opportunity that we were given to address the needs of our people, and we took it. And after taking the leap of faith, we have excelled in that particular area and arena, becoming a model to other tribal governments around the United States. Our gaming business started small, and as you may know, was first located close to Atmore. It was just a bingo hall in the 1980s. And I'm not sure if any of you actually visited that place. I think everybody at the tribe actually worked at some part within. I was the trash collector, a waiter, the pull tab clerk. My brother was a caller and such, but every tribal member probably growing up had the opportunity to work, and that was their first jobs. From those early days, we were good stewards of our proceeds, and we began to slowly improve our community as the business grew. In 2007, we received financing to build a hotel and casino in the middle of what we had been a cotton field for many years on our lands that were held in trust by the federal government. We knew it was a big risk, but believed we could bring something special to our community that would not only create jobs, but also support families. We were very fortunate that Wind Creek Atmore was a success. That success encouraged us to look for additional growth opportunities, starting with Wind Creek Wetumpka, and then by adding Wind Creek Montgomery. Our early successes with Wind Creek allowed us an opportunity to diversify and invest in non-gaming enterprises through Creek Indian Enterprises Development Authority, also known as CIDA. As the tribe's economic development arm, CIDA focuses on creating business opportunities within the tourism, hospitality, manufacturing, governmental services, and retail sectors of business. Through CIDA, we've worked with major hotel brands like Marriott and Hilton on building and operating hotels, including Huntsville, Atmore, and Foley. All of these located in Alabama, as well as in other parts of the Southeast. While we never planned to build OWA, our entertainment destination in Foley, the city had been left with a big unfinished project in early 2015. And we saw the potential to create a multi-pronged business that would bring in families and tourism dollars and create jobs. In fact, that basis on which we approach each business opportunity, we ask, will it make money? Will it allow us to create jobs? And will it improve the quality of life within the community? Luckily, we've been able to say yes to those questions when opportunities have come to us from different parts of the state. Many of you may not be aware that we have created and are continually growing a government contracting division known as PCI Federal Services. It's an umbrella company for a number of different types of federal contracting businesses that include everything from providing aircraft maintenance to offering communications and the marketing services to NASA. PCI Federal Services allows for us to compete for projects and create jobs around the United States and ultimately bring that revenue back to Alabama. Closer to home, we have Perdita River Farms, a farming business right down the road from the casino in Atmore. This business operation locally raises and sells cattle. We also own the award-winning Creek Travel Plaza near the casino on I-65, where travelers can take a break and get a warm meal. All told, we own over 40 diversified businesses. Each of these businesses have grown from our desire to create jobs and provide a better quality of life for not only our people, but our neighbors across the state. In the last few years, we've had exported our made in Alabama Wind Creek brand to Pennsylvania and further to Aruba and Curacao in the Caribbean. And we are currently in construction of a Wind Creek world-class resort in the Chicago area. We're really proud to export our homegrown Alabama-based brand to other places in the world. But what that means the most to us is that any growth we generate ultimately benefits the state that we call home. Personally, I'm very proud that our small tribe is seen as a leader in generating economic development among tribal governments around the United States. And I think it's important to mention that we have continued to reinvest our gaming proceeds in a way that have improved the quality of life for not just our tribal members, but for our neighbors. At Porch, we built a health clinic, an assisted living facility, and we gave over $3 million to our local hospital. We all know that rural hospitals have been hurting these past few years, and we were proud to be able to help ours hang on and continue to treat patients, especially during COVID. We've given money to our local schools in the Escambia County, Alabama, and we built a community center with a Boys and Girls Club, a cultural department, an education department, and every day hundreds of children go there for after-school activities. I know that your Kiwanis Club has invested valuable time and considerable leadership skills in positively impacting children throughout Birmingham for many years. Your mentor-based Head Start reading programs have given youngsters skills they need to start school ready to learn and succeed. And you have awarded college scholarships to so many bright young people who without you couldn't have had the opportunity to go to college, and we've been blessed to do the same. We at Porch applaud that work and share those values. We offer 2, 3, and 4 pre-K to our tribal members and neighbors because those early years are critically important to a child's ability to succeed in school and life. And we are currently in the process of starting a pilot program for a child care program for our employees. We feel this is one of the most important investments and the best that our gaming revenues can make. While it is important to us that we grow education opportunities for future generations, we also focus on growing the quality of life with other communities throughout the state. We're committed to sharing our time and our resources, whether it's extending police and fire protection to our neighbors, donating to charities, helping people in times of need, or helping to promote Alabama as a great place to live. The World Games here in Birmingham was a great way to elevate Alabama's image on the world stage, and we were happy to be a major sponsor of that as well. Across Alabama, we have made significant donations to public schools, educational institutions, local children's hospitals, and to nonprofits averaging more than $7 million per year. For us, gaming has afforded the chance to become self-sufficient, to grow at home, and have enough that we can give back. We understand hard times and what struggle is. And that's why we can help and we will help. So if you've wondered why we want a comprehensive gaming bill for the state, it's because we know from firsthand experience what gaming done right can do for Alabama and its long-lasting positive impacts to our neighbors. We at Porch are driven by a need to do more. We feel we have a vital role to play in the success for our state, and we are willing to work hard to grow our communities. It's always a pleasure to be with you in Birmingham, meeting with you today and sharing part of our history. Thank you for the work that you're doing for this community and for Alabama. Always know that we at Porch stand ready to be your partners in progress. Thank you, and I'm more than welcome, happy to take any questions that you may have and do my best to answer them.